I'm here. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to the Know Your Gear podcast, episode number 279. It was funny. It delayed for a second. And I hope you guys had a good week. I've had an interesting week. Good week, but I had some technical difficulties today. It was time for a new computer. I change them out every 2 years. I actually kill them pretty on the regular. That's what happens when you make a lot of video content. And so this time I went with a more robust computer. However, due to constant changes in specs on computers now, some of the stuff, my old gear doesn't work with the proper cables, and so we had to order some new cables. Long story short, this is the old computer. So I'm back on the old computer because the new computer has different amount of a USB to a USB-C to all kinds of ports, so different ports. And so of course, like everything, you need more adapters and more dongles and more things. It's the future of everything. Buy something and then buy an adapter. So that's what's going on. Nothing very exciting, but I thought I'd share with you. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me this Friday. If you're looking in the chat, you can see the moderators. They have blue. Their name is in blue with a blue wrench. And then you can see members, and their names are green. And we have patrons who support this. This is a patron member-supported show. It has been since its origination at 279 episodes. Actually, I always say 279 episodes. I don't actually know how many episodes there are. If you guys listen to this show and not watch it, there's more episodes. I think on audio, I think we're at 300. I think we're on our 300th show. So they're not numbered, though, in the audio platform. So for those of you guys that listen to it, which is weird because it's, like I said, it feels like a big number hanging out, but it's a bigger number that listen. What else? I don't know. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. New gear, new exciting things, and of course, some subjects, and some early risers. And we'll probably just get right into it. As always, thank you so much for the ones that come early and leave some questions. The first one is from Kev. Kev said, "Hey Phil, did you see the Tone Master?" Tone Master, I'm sure you guys all know, but Tone Master is a series of amplifiers that Fender makes that is digital. It is the same technology modeling technology. So what it is it's an amplifier, but it has a simulation technology in it. So like the Fender Tone Master 65 Deluxe Reverb reissue it looks just like the 65 Deluxe Reverb. It's ultra light. They make a twin as well, a super reverb, and now, which is what we're going to be talking about, a Princeton. And you guys know I love the Princeton and I love this Deluxe Reverb. Those are two amps that I've had since the day I started this channel, and I still have them and still use them on a I'd say daily basis. The Deluxe Reverb gets used the most because it's in the channel so much more than just my personal life, where the Princeton's more just in my personal life. And so this is an idea that Fender has. I did a video that was called like 10 reasons to buy one and 10 reasons not to buy one. I just wanted to come at it objectively. I bought that amp, as you guys could tell from that video, because on a live show, you guys mentioned I should get it. And, I had no resources to get one sent out through either retailers or through Fender or anybody like that. So I go, okay, let's just buy it, check it out. I did a video of it. And like I said, that amp, I love that amp. I really liked it. I didn't keep it because I have a real 65 Deluxe Reverb, and I say real because it is. It's real. It sounds better. It reacts better. It's a better amplifier, and I want to say that because this is where it gets hung up. Like tubes are better than solid state or digital. That's a great argument. That's not the argument I'm making. So I want to be clear. When I say better, I prefer it. That's to me, regardless of price. Regardless of technology, when I put my 65 Deluxe Reverb next to my Tone Master and weighed out the options, which is the Tone Master is a little lighter, Tone Master has a DI out, Tone Master had an attenuator built in, which is a cool feature. I have an attenuator, not built in, but I have an attenuator in my Deluxe Reverb. I don't know if I've ever showed that. Maybe I should, in the next video I do where I use that amp, I should show it. But keep in mind, that attenuator is not on when I do the review because I try to keep the amp stock. So what I have is the power, no, is it the power brake? The Z brake. I think it's called the Z brake. It's by Dr. Z amps. And it's an attenuator that you can mount inside the cabinet of an amp. So mine's just mounted in there. It's permanently in there, and I can do the same thing as what they can do on the Tone Master. So anyways, it has a real spring reverb versus digital, which is not something I have a preference over either way. Some people like, analog versus digital effects. I like them both. To be honest with you, I kind of like digital effects better, as long as they're done right, when they're done right. So, like I said, I just prefer the 65 Deluxe Reverb amp over the Tone Master version, but that's it. I had both. I tried both, and it's the one I kept. So when it comes to the question, Kev's question, which is, did I see it? And he said, like, they're taking orders, and he's basically asking, like, he told me I should get one on the channel. Same thing. I would have to buy one and get one on the channel. I don't think Sweetwater would be sending a product like that out. I don't think it's on their radar. You got to understand, a lot of times when Sweetwater sends out products for videos, it's because they're working with a manufacturer, and companies like Fender they have their go-to YouTube channels to go to for reviews. So you're going to get the same reviews all the time. Some companies switch it up. It's like sometimes I'm in a rotation, sometimes I'm not. That's how it's just how it works. You guys see how it works. We all see how it works. Some channels get it all the time. Some get it sometime. Would I buy one? I wouldn't buy one for me personally. What I mean is to try on the channel because I'm not curious. The Princeton is very light. I don't have any issues, back problems or anything. So when I pick up the Princeton, to me, it's the lightest amplifier. And the Princeton has a big problem that I actually like that amp. As you know, I'm a huge fan of it. But it has a big problem. It doesn't get it gets loud, but I mean, it breaks up really quickly. So like an attenuator isn't something I've ever worried about with the Princeton. Usually I'm trying to keep the Princeton from breaking up because I'm trying to use it as a pedal platform more than I am just trying to drive it and get it to break up. So I've never really wanted to put an attenuator in that amp. And if I want that edge of breakup that it gets, I get that pretty as soon as I'm around a drummer. I mean, my Princeton has left me in more situations where I was like, I wish I had just a little bit more, but I'll make it work. I'll put it on a chair. So it's a weird choice for them to do. I think at this point, they're just doing it because they have the tech. So to them, they can just make the simulations and load it into the, whatever PC. I don't even understand that technology. I just know it's a computer, right? It's a simulation. So maybe that's why they're doing it. The other thing I saw was the amp is $899. Which I thought was, again, kind of strange. $50 more, you can get the Tone Master Deluxe Reverb. They're different amps, as I've had. As I've said, I have them both. There's different things about them. A lot of it has to do with the speaker, the 10-inch speaker versus the 12-inch speaker. A lot of it has to do with just the smaller wattage, 12 watts versus 22 watts. But ultimately, if I didn't have either the Princeton or the Deluxe Reverb, and they were sitting side by side in a store, and they were the same price or $50 apart, I would probably get the Deluxe Reverb for that price point. Unless, of course, like I said, I needed it I wanted to save a few pounds. So it was a weird choice. I don't know. I'd have to try it out. Maybe I'll get lucky and try one out. I've been telling everybody for the Tone Master stuff, I've been really excited and hoping that they're going to do a 59 basement. And I think a lot of players out there are thinking that too, because I've owned three 59 basements over my life. It's a love-hate relationship amplifier for me. I love it, and it is so ungodly loud and a pain in the ass to attenuate because the speakers are hardwired into the amplifier. There's no modernized quarter-inch jack like on a lot of newer Fender combos where I can just plug a speaker cable out to an attenuator and then back to the speakers, and plug them and then attenuate that. And the Fender Basement 59 is 4 ohms, which is a much different situation because some attenuators do 4 ohms and some don't. Some only do 16 and 8, and so it's an amp I think more people would be interested to see attain the beast, because if you've never had you may not have never had the desire, but if you've never tried it, it's a fun thing. I would say the 59 Bassman by Fender cranked, like jumped and cranked like a plexi, is just such an amazing tone that I love. I love it, but it will knock your teeth out. So it's a great amp. So the So like I said, to see a Tone Master version of that amp, I think I'd be very excited. And I think I would do it, especially since that amp has gotten, oh, thanks, Sean, it's 2 ohms. That's the problem. That's right. I remember my first Bassman, I had to get a hot plate. Remember the THD hot plates? And I remember that was the problem. I couldn't find a 2 ohm. God, I forgot it was 2 ohms. That's even worse, right? So it's a weird, I knew it was like a problem. I just couldn't remember off the top of my head. It's been about 4 years since I've played a Bassman, a 59 Bassman, but I mean, I love that amp. So I would love a Tone Master version of that. And because of that, that's another reason why I kind of want to have a Tone Master amp around. You know, it's kind of a nice amplifier, quality sounding amplifier. A lot of complaints about the quality, the technology and stuff, but I'm not really worried about that as so much as I'm not worried about that so much as I like the convenience of it. So that's my holdout, is if they sent one for review, I would definitely review it and give you guys my thoughts on it, of course, because I'm uber curious to check it out. But for an amp I'm going to buy, if I'm going to buy a Tone Master from Fender, I'm holding out for the Bassman 59. And I think they'll do it. If they don't do it, it'd be the craziest thing. But also, if I work for their marketing team, I would make it dead last, because I think a lot of players, that's usually how you want to do this kind of stuff. If you're trying to make the, money, if you're focused on money, you know that everybody will buy all this stuff because hoping you'll finally make the thing they want. And then when you make the thing they want, they sell that stuff off and get that. So I'm sure that's what they're doing. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. Okay. Robert says, you get new glasses yet? No, I never got to stop this week. This week was one of those where I was just locked in front of the computer all week. Some weeks are different, than others, and that's kind of an exciting part of the job. But sometimes I'm just literally on a Zoom call, 4 or 5 hours a day, every single day, and then computer emails from that. A lot of emails and Zoom calls, and it seems to get worse year after year after year, which, it's part of the gig. Okay. Next early riser question came from Tampa Blues. He says, what is the worst type to do repair? Oh, guitar. What is the worst type of guitar to do repairs on? So, what's funny? I like a question like that because, one thing that I try not to do. We're all guilty of our everything. I try not to complain about repairs. And the reason is I really like modding and repairing instruments. Obviously before I had this YouTube channel, I didn't do anything much other than that. I ran other things. I ran businesses and stuff, but that was always a day-to-day process. But every day was definitely interacting and repairing and working on guitars. And I really, really enjoy it. And, I say to my close friends almost weekly, like, I know one day that comes back. That's what I'm looking forward to it. Like some people talk about a retirement plan. My end goal plan for YouTube is one day, no one hangs out with me on Friday. No one watches the videos, and I'll still make them. But of course, it's like, it'll be different, right? And I'll start pushing and doing more repair because, again, that's just something I really want to do. And it may find its way working itself into my life again, because I do find this beautiful zen in it. And so here's why I say that, because again, I just want you to understand, I don't know if I could actually tell anyone that there's a type of guitar that I don't like. I'm not going to tell anyone who, because I don't, who the person, there's a type of customer I don't prefer for doing repairs for. And it's not what you think, well, you know what it is. It's the bitchy ones. No one likes people. People are harder than guitars to work with. So I try to not do that. In fact, I kind of always am put off by any repair people. And I know it's default because I'm guilty of it. But I can tell you that if you can find me complaining about guitar repair, it's very rare. And me to actually offer it up without somebody actually prying into me on it is almost non-existent because of the fact that, like I said, I think that's just, I really do love what I do. So when you love what you do, sure, it can be aggravating, it can be stressful, but most of that stress has nothing to do with me not enjoying working on it. It's not enjoying that the result's not coming at a timely manner. So to again on that question, which is a great question, I think is like, what guitars do I like kind of dread, or what guitars do I not like to work on? That I don't, the worst types to work on. It's sometimes the ones that make it the process, scary. Like you're like, I don't know if I'm getting there. Now, there's another part of this where you could be asking me like, what's the type of guitar, and the idea of like, is it a hollow body, acoustic, electric? To probably the only guitars that are tricky sometimes are hollow bodies, because again, they slow down. The process goes really, really slow if you're working electronics. And guitars, you guys all are guitar players watching this, you understand this. Wherever you live, whether you are a guitar tech, whether you go to a guitar tech, whether you're a luthier or you go to a luthier, everybody knows what the guitar luthiers and techs specialize in. You could tell they're really good. Like this guitar tech's really good at setting things up. This really guitar tech's really good at, at woodworking. This one's really good at repairs, like actual damaged instruments, refinishing. I would say, I obviously can repair, I can do setups very, very well because I've done a lot of them, but it's not necessarily anything I go, oh, I love that. I actually really enjoy the electronics part. And that's why hollow bodies are a little bit weird, because it, like I said, I just kind of love the idea of just pulling out the electronics and working on them. And a hollow body guitar is a different process. It's a little bit of it's like, to me, it reminds me of fishing and doing electronics. so that would be I'd say those type of guitars. I lucked out because a lot of guitar techs that I've met over my life really hate cheap guitars. Like there's an anger almost in the idea, like, oh, they brought me this cheap blah, blah, blah guitar to work on. And I almost, because like I said, it was such an adopted philosophy to be that way, that even when I started out, I kind of like, oh, this guy bought me a $90 guitar to do repairs. And, to be honest with you, I don't know what it was. Something clicked on me very early on. Like, I just all of a sudden went, man, those are the best ones to bring to life. Because if you think about it, I think I've told this story before. I was working on, I'll never forget this. I was working on a PRS custom, I think 24, doesn't matter, some high-end PRS custom guitar. And my buddy Joe walked by and said, oh, you're doing a setup on a PRS? And I said, yeah. And he goes, why would somebody pay for you to do that? He's like, they play great. And I'm like, he's implying that you can just do some minor adjustments. And I said, oh yeah, they are one of the easier guitars to work on. And that's when I kind of had a moment where I was like, yeah, you know what? The really nice guitars that you just make minor adjustments on, they're really easy. And I don't know what's exciting about doing easy. I mean, it's easy payday, which is always, that feels nice to do some work and get paid and not have to, kill yourself for it. But man, I love turning to the point where, it's I'll make it I'll make it like my like Moby Dick. It'll be my great white whale. Like I literally have to make this guitar better, and I'll keep going. So that's a very long answer, but you can tell when I take a long time to answer a question like that, it's because I really like it. I like that question. I like talking about that stuff, because like I said, it's a big part of my life, and it really shaped me as a musician, as who I am, as doing repair, and it shaped my channel as doing repair. All those years of repair knowledge has taught me, who would have thought, like, I'm going to review things for a living or something. It's such a silly, weird thing to think a long time ago, or not that long ago, and now it's happening. And I find when I watch a lot of reviews, I really appreciate like the channels that have humor. I appreciate the channels that can play really well. There's a lot of things that make them valuable. But one of the things that I like now is that when I review a guitar, especially guitars more than anything else, I feel like it's like, man, it's like 20 years of working on them. I just can't unshake that information out of my head when I'm looking at a review. I'm like thinking all the things that might go wrong, might be a problem, might be great. Where did they save money? Where did they spend money? And I just, like I said, it's weird how that paid a dividend. Who would have thunk it? The next one is from Zanzibar, 4KY7. It says, I went from Burstbuckers, Gibson Burstbuckers, to a JB, Seymour Duncan JB, and love the change. What pickups should I look at to go even further. The JB is a fantastic pickup. I have always said this. When you think of iconic pickups forever, are going to be the DiMarzio Super Distortion, the Seymour Duncan JB. These are game-changing pickups for music. You can hear the songs that those pickups are made with. Of course, the PAF. It's an amazing pickup. And so the reason you like that is because, again, what's happened is, to me, when you went from the Burstbuckers, which to me have those, I think, articulate highs that I really like, to the JB, which has these punchy mids, and it's 14K, and it's wound a little hot. It's not like the Super Distortion, where the Super Distortion is like a chainsaw. I guess the JB's like, I don't know what I'm saying. This is like a flamethrower. I'm just trying to articulate a feeling more than a sound. Like when I can tell when a guitar has a JB in it. You can just feel it you feel the amp just kind of wants to go, and the Super Distortion, the amp just wants to break up real fast, which I kind of like about that too. But obviously you like the more mids, and it seems like you like the more output, which is pushing your amplifier a little bit differently. And I think you're losing a little bit of the top end sparkle, and you're losing a little bit of the warmth of the lows going from the Burstbucker. But again, that's not a negative, because let's face it, there's reasons why I like both those pickups. So in your case, I like to think of the JB as the mid output pickups range. Okay. I don't know what Seymour Duncan classifies on their website. So I don't think of it as high aggressive as like an X2N from DiMarzio, or a Invader from Seymour Duncan. It's not really like a high output pickup. So I would go with anything that's in that range of pickups, mid-range pickups, just something that's a little bit more hot, a little hotter. What I like about the JB is it does rock, metal, and blues, and it does them all pretty well. It's a well-rounded pickup. And Dan says the JB is more rounded and warm than the Super Distortion. Absolutely, the Super Distortion is definitely because I actually have a guitar with a Super Distortion in the bridge, and its sole purpose is like, it's a no-brainer pickup. You take the Super Distortion, you plug it into a tube screamer, and you plug it into a Marshall, especially a non-master volume Marshall, and it's like everything you loved about the late 70s through the mid to late 80s. It's that tone. It's just it's before the high gain amplifier tone. This is how we're going to make a high gain amplifier. And the JB to me is again better for like you said, the mids. It's a little more rounded. It does its thing. The JB, and I've always said this. The JB, I think it's not a reputation, because I don't want to say it has a bad reputation, but it gets labeled a lot as being very not okay. It's not a great pickup because it's so pedestrian, because it's in everything now. There was a time where, most of you here, if you're over the age of 40, you probably remember like, man, if you could just get one of those pickups, like it was just it was a dream come true if you're trying to get that sound. Now, if you're much, much older, then you're like, you probably weren't looking for that sound. And now, it's in every guitar, so it's like, I'm so sick of that. Everybody's kind of looking for something sexier and different. And there's what do you call it? There's truth to that, but also, like I said, I just because something is everywhere doesn't mean it's not good. I don't know. Okay, hold on. Okay. I'm sorry. Reading some of your comments. Yeah. So Larry is working on. He does these stories. If you go to DiMarzio website, they're fantastic. He's doing these stories. I told him he should write a book. I don't think he's going to do that anytime soon or at all. But he started writing stories about, like the time he developed the pickups, or how, him and his team developed the pickups for Eddie Van Halen for the Music Man guitar project, and the time that they worked with Steve Vai with the Green Meanie and all these guitars over the times. And he's writing these stories. And he did one with Phil Collin that was amazing from Def Leppard. And he's writing these stories. And one of the ones he's got coming is basically the story of the Super Distortion. And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of you guys are bringing up Bill Lawrence. And man, the story of Bill Lawrence and the Super Distortion and all that stuff and how it all connects and the history of it is just really interesting. So, Quentin James says the Invader is 16.4K. Yeah, it's that's not even that high. So there are certain pickups, like certain Kiesel pickups go 30K. It's because it gets a little tricky when we just look at resistance, right? It's like that's the problem. I every time we just look at the one. That's like we're looking at one factor, and I've been looking for great analogies over the years, and it's tough, right? And like I said, and admittedly, I'm not a car guy, so using a car analogy is always a dangerous thing for me, but I use this very lightly, but to understand it, talking about a pickup and using just one factor, right, is like talking about a car and only going, oh, this is the horsepower, but we're not going to talk about, torque, or we're not going to talk about, the transmission, and we're not going to, what I mean? There's so many things other than just that, but essentially when people talk about horsepower, it's one element that tends to be, if you have it, then everything else falls in line. So I believe, as a layman, kind of just keep it easy kind of thing when you're talking about pickups. If you just talk about resistance and say, okay, this is resistance 16K, it's going to be a really hot output pickup, you're generally going to be correct. There's going to be examples where it's not the same and it's not going to tell you the whole story, because it doesn't, but at least you're in the ballpark of what you kind of want. So I only say that because a lot of people get really, really into this, and then if you get into it, we can go down all kinds of nerd holes and check this out. But up until that point, it really confuses people very easy, and then you undo some of the easy things that people kind of think they understand. So, okay. All right. Let's see. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just looking over some of the things. I think I hit all the easy ones. All the early ones I tagged. Let me grab a couple others real quick while we're talking about stuff. You guys are talking about the guitars. I'm on a blue kick, including the shirt. The shirt is from Dansville Music. They sent me the shirt. They sent me a Hawaiian shirt too. I was gonna wear it, but then I decided not yet. They were nice. They sent me a nice little care package. Had a patch, it had a hat, it had two shirts. As you guys know, Dansville Music, I bought I'm pointing at it right now, the Music Man, John Petrucci, JP 15, 7-string from them. And then in the video, I said, hey, I bought this, and of course I mentioned them in the video. And of course they, what's funny is one of you guys, as always, reached out to them and said, hey, Phil mentioned you in a video. And they were like, oh, and they sent me a nice little email through Reverb, because I bought it through them from them through Reverb, saying, hey, thank you for the shout out. Can we send you some swag? And of course I was like, yeah, please. I would love some shirts and stuff. So of course I'm just representing them today. I like the shirt. It's very, very classy. I like the color. And the guitars are definitely more 80s themes. And it tends to be, if you on Friday show, whatever guitars are on me, it tends to be whatever I'm working on at that time. I tend to like, okay, I need this guitar. I need this. And speaking of mention, a lot of you guys sent me an email this week. Thank you for that. About Josh Scott from JHS Pedals did a video on like whether or not like demo videos are fake. I feel horrible because now I'm like, what is that? What it was really called? Hold on a second. I'm gonna check so I get the title right. So there's no JHS demo video. Okay, the title of the video was 6 Problems with Guitar Demos. And so I got up one morning this week, as I do, and got coffee. And while I was getting coffee, I go and look at messages. And I tend to look for, obviously, I'm looking for certain messages for business purposes. But if I see like all of a sudden like 10 messages with the same kind of subject line, I'm like, uh-oh. Right? It's kind of like the news, right? When all of a sudden you see the news like tag the same thing, you're like, something's going on. And it was all like, did you see Josh Scott? And I'm like, oh no. And so I clicked on it and it says Josh Scott. So what happened was Josh Scott did a video called 6 Problems with Guitar Pedal Demos. And what I will do, I'll put a link when I index it so you can go to it. Great video. It's 38 minutes long. And somewhere in there, I came up, or somebody mentioned me, or he mentioned me, and basically he said that he likes the channel and that he likes my approach, and that I'm a straight shooter is basically what I got from it. I'm paraphrasing, of course, and so it was very kind to get a compliment like that. I obviously can imagine you kind of like you never know. like, six problems with demos. They're like, well, Phil sucks. So you're like, you never know how. I'm like, okay, I think there was going to be a problem. I wasn't anticipating a problem, in other words. Oh, what is what I'm trying to say? But I was kind of like, I didn't know what was going to be the context. So it was really nice. And it was like, it was basically very nice to be mentioned in that way. And especially from someone who is, very, very well respected in the communities. I mean, he's done great. So it made my week. And of course it made it easy to mention it on the show today. So that was very, very nice. And like I said, check it out. It was really cool. And I want you, if you do watch it, I'm going to give you a tidbit, cause I ended up watching the whole thing, of course. There was something he said in there, and it's funny how, on the sides of the fence, so to speak. I'm on the YouTuber and you guys are on the YouTube watcher, more so for side of the fence. And he said something in the video, and I've seen this with Rhett Shaw on his podcast. Rhett Shaw and I had this conversation. This isn't like, oh, I was hanging out with Rhett Shaw. It wasn't that. It was just, I made a point when I saw Rhett Shaw at Sweetwater to tell him that I really appreciated this conversation he had in his video. And he was talking about the emotional aspects of being on YouTube and how you deal with it and how it affected him. And it took a lot of guts, man. I was really, really impressed with that. If you guys want, I'll actually link that in this description to that episode. It will mean, I told him, he even said in the video, I don't know if anyone will care about this because it's more about YouTubers, but it really spoke to me. Josh Scott said something that really spoke to me too in his video. He was talking about, he just said it very casually, but he said, I obviously, as a pedal company, he pays for demo videos. And he says, and I'm not sure how I feel about that either. And he goes, and he's talking about this, and there's an unsettled tone in his voice. And I immediately connect with that, because I've had that same feeling since the day I've started this channel. Not really the day I started this channel, since the day the first company, which I think was F Pedals, that reached out and said, we'd like to send you a pedal. This whole but if I work with the company, don't I work for the company? And what am I doing? Am I a marketing thing? And I've told you guys this before. I totally miscalculated and it screwed up my entire channel, whether you guys realize it or not. I always thought, I always thought the Howard Stern logic, and which was the Howard Stern logic that I perceived from reading his book a long, long time ago, was he would do whatever he wants, and ultimately the companies would have to bend to him because, the viewers, right? Everybody watches Howard Stern, and because they watch Howard Stern, of course, the advertisers have to advertise with him. Obviously, I'm not in that context of that offensive stuff, but I honestly thought, if I get everybody watching, if I get a viewership, if I get big enough, the companies will have to acknowledge this, and I'll be able to say and do whatever I feel is right, and I'll never have to do anything that compromises my integrity. And boy, was I wrong, because it didn't take long for companies to really punch me in the face with the whole, no, we'll just go to somebody else. As soon as you say something we don't like, we're going to make 10 other channels say the opposite as you, and you're going to sound stupid. And I've had that happen. Like I said, I've had a YouTuber go as far as a friend I consider a friend channel contact me to say, look, I got this product in an email, and it basically says somebody put us on blast, and we would like you and these other channels to say some nice things about our product. And they said, and of course it wasn't like they were being told to lie. It was a good product. I didn't actually talk about the product they're talking about. I just talked about the company. And that was my first realization, it never occurred to me, right? It's the difference between Howard Stern logic that was so flawed was, he could say some offensive things, and if the companies don't like it, the viewers will support it. Well, the reality is, that's not how it works on this platform. There's 1,000 channels, if not 10,000 channels. And if I say something a company doesn't like, and it's very easy to tell if you look at the channel, the way it's worked over the years. When I started, every time I said something that a company didn't like, it's almost like they attacked me publicly and we went head to head, that was about some of the time, let's say 30% of the time. Another 30% of the time, they would reach out and say, hey, come out, like Sweetwater, right? I said some things at Sweetwater. I wasn't very positive about Sweetwater, and Sweetwater was like, well, come out and see, you know what I mean? Let's see, for sure, right? Let's see where we land on this. And now I can tell you now, if I say something a company doesn't like, they just easily go to another channel. So it's the acceptance of that. So the reason I say that is there's conflict in you every day when I do this, and there's been conflict of this show even, because this show has cost me more possible reviews than any review I've ever done. I always love it when people say, you don't even really say anything that much bad. And I'm like, yeah, well, unfortunately, you know what I mean? It's not as easy as that. It's sometimes just a subject that they don't want discussed, and it's being discussed obviously in an open forum, and having a bigger audience. The bigger your audience gets, the actual worse they actually feel about it, because it's, you know, it's one thing if only 10 people find out about it, but if thousands. So it just is an interesting thing. So I'm just sharing that with you because I really felt it in his tone and his voice that he's like, hey, I'm trying to find the road to integrity here, and the road to being a musician and enjoying this stuff with you guys, but also like trying to live in this industry. And I find the same thing. Like I said, I try to do the same thing. I'm trying to find out a way to work with everybody and be positive and be honest. Like I said, those things shouldn't be at conflict with each other. And that's how I really believe it. And that's why I go with the road I go with. But man, I'd be lying if I didn't say sometimes, man, I can be down for 2 days just because I'm so depressed about something that got, backlashed of something I did. And I knew it was going to happen, but I was like, I just felt like I got to say this. For instance, like I'm pretty sure Fender didn't like my 10 things to, about that amp video. I'm laughing because I remember when I did it, I go, oh, they're going to be so pissed. So, and there you go. That's the discussion on that. That's the thing. So check that out. And like I said, again, staying with the positive, it's, man, it was just great to hear somebody say that they like the channel that's well respected in the community. And then Pedally, hey Pedally, what's up? I heard Nathan went to your shop. He said your shop was great. Pedally is a shop in Arizona, in the Phoenix area. So if you're ever in town or if you live in town, check out Pedally. It's right there. It's pedal and then .ly. And I when I searched it once, it came up just by searching Google that. It says most modern gear is good, but it's hard to trust reviews that are 100% good all the time. Well, it's tough, right? Because what happens is the channels always say, I only review stuff if I like it. And then, so everything is positive and you don't see the negative. And what I try to do is tell you when I'm excited about something versus, when you guys ask for it. Okay. That's basically the difference. 'Cause again, let's be honest, at the core of it, I like everything, especially when somebody sends it to you for free. I've always said this without buying it. And this is an odds. I have an odds with a lot of channels. We agree on so many things in some channels, and I don't agree on this. I can't buy everything that's on the channel. It's just physically not possible. Even if you're flipping it, it's just not possible. So when companies reach out, especially if they sponsor and stuff, it really helps your channel move along. In fact, it's the difference between your channel dying on the vine and growing at some point. But that being said, the one thing I try to stay away from, speaking of, is that if a company sends something out and somehow I didn't pay for it, I try to talk about everything else and I mention how much it costs. But notice I don't justify how much it costs. You'll never hear me justify a price if I didn't pay for it. Never once. I've been trying to figure out for years how to do that. I don't know how to do it. I've never figured out a way. I call it the rapture. The rapture is the pain of your wallet. I had $600 and now I have this thing. How do I feel about that? I don't know. When a company sends it to me, sometimes not only do they send it to you, they're sponsoring the video. So it's the opposite. You're like, this is actually no rapture. It's the opposite. But still, I always disclose the price. This is what they go for. This is where the market is comparative to it. And, here's what I like about it and dislike about it. But notice no discussion of that because I can't speak to it. Other than maybe sometimes, like on this live show, I'll talk about it as someone who's been in the industry for a while. So again, comparative. Like here's what the market's asking. But it's a tough thing, man. It's a tough thing. Yeah, Ola, they're talking about, Ola does a good job of saying he doesn't like something if he doesn't actually. There's a lot of channels that say things that if they don't like it. There's a lot, by far. Ola's one, Hating Polly's one. There's a lot of, I could go through, go through channels all day. If they mention that they may not like something about a product. For sure. Okay. Too much YouTube talk, I think. We'll go back to guitar. Yes. You know, it's funny. You know, Sean Brooks, it's a great question, or great statement. He says, Phil, did you see where Trogley reviewed a Glary's guitar and he said it was so bad they stopped making the model? I did not see that. I can tell you my experience with Glary, though. Glary sent a guitar out, and I was curious, like everybody, like $65 guitar. And Glary's game is like Donner's and a lot of companies and that do this game. Their game is, what they're doing is they're having, you guys think it's about selling guitars. It is, but not in the point of the videos. In other words, Glary's, what they're doing when there's, because a lot of specialty products are sold on Amazon, what they're trying to do is increase sales to increase their sorting, you know, where they're at on Amazon, and raise their pricing. And so like Glary, when I first reviewed the first one, it was $65. Obviously it's more than that, but it's not because of inflation. They would just rose if you can give them a viral video where, let's say 1,000 of you guys buy their product, they'll raise their price, because again, if they raise the price too fast ahead of time, they don't get the sales, and then they don't get sorted correctly in Amazon. So it's a whole Amazon game with a lot of these import companies. But the Glary thing that was hilarious was I did a video where I got a Glary and it basically said, this is the true cost of a Glary guitar. And they were the one, I learned a lot from that company. And here's what I learned. So I did this video. They said, I'll send it out. And I go, okay. But basically in the video I said, this guitar is going to cost you more than a Squire by the time you figure out the repairs, unless you do all the repairs yourself. And I've always said this, like for mods, that's the only thing I found interesting about Glary's was doing mods. And they loved it. And they're like, we want to send you another one. I'm like, oh, okay. And I couldn't figure that out first. Okay. So, you know, and what I learned was a lot of these companies, they don't watch your videos. So I know what you're saying about Trogley, but I can tell you with a lot of companies, and Donner's one for sure, there's usually so many different marketing people handling it that the company actually never sees the video. So I did a couple videos where it was like over and over again, it was like, this is what I don't like about it. This one's really bad too. Don't buy this one. And it didn't matter. They were like, let's do another one. And you're like, this is so strange. So you, at some point you have to just go, okay, well, I'm moving on. And really that's what it's about too for me, is just moving on. But yeah, they're that entire, and I don't want to say genre of companies, but they're all a certain type of Amazon-based companies. There's like no bad press. There's no such thing. What's the saying? There's no such thing as bad press. Like those companies definitely believe that. You can make a video. You could get a Glary and make a video called "Glary's Give You Cancer and Will Kill Your Children and Don't Buy Them." And I bet you Glary would send you another guitar immediately next week. And again, I'm not saying as a fact, because I can't state that as fact. But as an opinion, I've seen companies like that work like that here on the YouTube, and it's very interesting and weird. But yeah. So on a side note, I've had the opposite problem on my channel. I had two companies now where I've done videos, and their entire plan was they were discontinuing a product, and they sent it out for review. And I did the review, and they sold so many that the backlog enforced them. And they even told me, they reached out and said, hey, now we have to keep that product in production for another 2 years. And I was like, oh, I'm like, oh, well, that was good. It was good we saved it. Let's see. Yeah, Superjet says 13 says Glary is the bottom of the barrel. That's why there's no bad press. Well, of course. I mean, it's a super inexpensive guitars, and no one. I watch videos because I try to watch some and get a reference things, and I watch some videos where channels were like hammering the Glarys, you know, and they're like they're junk and throw them away, and I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. But again, like I said, I like it as a modding platform. I'll say what I said in the videos. If you get a Glary, you'll learn how to work on guitars. It's fundamentally it's a platform. Okay. And then Sean saying what I learned is, I'm just, because I'm on this, we're still on the subject. He said what you learned is Glary don't speak English. That's not true at all. That's not it at all. I've said this before. There are so many companies that you work with where you don't work with the company. It's a third party marketing company, and that marketing company changes all the time. I won't say the company's name, but I've worked with a company And in a year, I worked with at least a dozen. I mean, that's one a month. Dozen different marketing companies, not people in the same marketing company, companies. In fact, some of them employ multiple companies at the same time. And so, like I said, and I'll tell you this, and I'll say it one more time. I like talking about some of this stuff. Some of this stuff on the YouTube and how YouTube makes money and stuff. I'm probably never going to do a video like that unless somebody pays me an insane amount of money, because the amount of money that it's not about learning about it. Most of it wouldn't be interesting to most people, but the amount of money you can learn and learn how to make money on this platform, I think it's very valuable, too valuable to give away for free, for sure. Okay, there was something else I saw, and it was cool because it brought us back to guitars. And this all actually is good because it's about a subject that I got this week that was really interesting. So maybe that's the lead into it that we'll go with. And then... Hold on, I'm just reading some of you guys' comments still on all this stuff. Let's see. This subject came up great. Perfect timing. And it was about the new Jacksons this week. And a lot of people sent me an email, just like the Princeton. They're like, "Hey, did you see the new Jacksons?" So Jackson Guitars came out with a new line of guitars. Let me pull it up here. Oh, actually, you know what's funny is I have a link. So let's find it. Give me 1 second here. Okay. And click that, and this should take me right to it. It does. Oh, good. Oh, good. All right, there we go. Let me click on to this. Okay, and I'll share it with you. From guitar channels and the guitar community and everybody. I was watching it unfold. It was really interesting. So you got to understand how I look at that, or, my state of mind on this. They came out and I go, okay, it's a Jack Solus, neck through body, right? Compound radius. It's got Duncans in it. Essentially no different than if you guys look on the channel. I did a video with Nathan Saunier, who's a friend of the channel, who works at Fender Jackson in the custom shop, and he bought a Jackson custom shop Solus that at that time was $4,000 and about a year and a half to maybe 2 years waiting list, but a year and a half for sure. So a year and a half and $4,000 to get yourself a Jackson Soloist, and his was in pink. I think it was like a pink metallic. So not much different in paint job than this, and of course maybe better fit and finish, and of course a couple things that were interesting. So the interesting thing was, his has a real quote unquote Floyd Rose, where this one had the Floyd Rose 1500. This is where stop the presses. $2,600 made in the USA, but a Korean made import Floyd Rose bridge. What is going on here? And we keep seeing more and more in this. And this is where I wanted to talk about this for a second. And it's because sometimes I think everybody has, of course, we have 1,000 opinions, right? Maybe even more. But I'm talking about right now, there's 1,100 people watching. There's 1,100 different opinions, probably, at least 1,000. And what's interesting about this is that if you look at specifications of certain Jacksons, you could find, like, they have the made in Japan ones that they reissued again, and they have Indonesian ones, and there's all kinds of specifications. And what I found interesting was we know brand value. It's something we've talked about on this channel. We talked about the fact, I've talked about it many times. I talked about it with Nathan when he brought in his Jackson to me. His Jackson is $4,000, takes a 2-year waiting list. A Sur guitar with similar specifications, not neck through, but similar specifications, $4,000 to $5,000 made basically in the same state of California. A Kiesel guitar made at not half, but almost half the price with the same specifications, right? So interesting enough, right? But all made in the same state of California, different prices, different folks. And of course we have the imports and all that stuff, but we know that the brand name, like the Sir brand name, commands a price point, right? And Jackson brand commands a price point, more so than, let's say, the Kiesel brand, a different branding, different power. But I started thinking about this differently when I was reading all the comments and watching all the things and reading all these emails about these new guitars. And it went from people who are like, they went from Jackson joy of, I can't believe this because I always wanted a Jackson soloist, and they're $4,000 and bam, now I can get one for 26, and it's basically the same thing. And then I watched, somebody sent me a thing going, did you see what this channel said? And the channel said, this is a joke, and if you buy one, you're stupid. That was actually a quote, I think, from the channel, and if I'm misquoting it, not off by much. And Quentin James. Thanks, Quentin. Quentin says $2,600 with a cheap Korean Floyd Rose. Stop it. Right? Interesting, though. I was like, okay, well, let me ask you a different way. Okay. So again, I'm only using the fact that I've physically played Nathan's Jackson, right? And he worked on it. And he's in the custom shop, so he worked on his own guitar. But anyways, back to his Jackson. It was compound radius, right? You have Seymour Duncan pickups, same Seymour Duncan pickups basically as in these guitars. Was neck through, same basically neck through design, same, I'd say same quality. Maybe, I don't know if it says these are flats on and maybe his was quarters on. That could be the case, but I don't think so. These had Goto locking keys. I don't remember if Nathan's has his. I thought I saw him in the chat. So if it does, Nathan, put if yours had locking keys. I thought yours had Jackson non-locking keys. And of course, his had a real, quote unquote, I always say that, a real Floyd Rose, because no, Floyds are really real because they're all basically licensed at some degree, and not even licensed anymore because the patent has expired. But that's not the point. The point is, what's a German-made Schaller Floyd Rose or a Goto Bridge Goto Floyd Rose, which are really considered some of the best ones? What are they going for now? $250? Let's say $300. So $300, 26. That's at $2,900. So essentially, you're getting a guitar that's specced out like a custom shop, but it's in stock. I mean, I've seen some already in stock. Some say pre-order, but I've seen them in stock. They're in stock. Essentially, I mean, $1,100 cheaper. Right? And maybe less color choices, but again, not a 2-year waiting list. This isn't going where you think it's going, because a lot of you think I'm probably going to justify why this is a good deal. That's not my point. My point is Jackson smarter than you guys as a whole? Us, I shouldn't say you guys. In other words, do they know the real value is like a brand, just putting that it's made in the USA? Is that the real value? Is the value that? Because sometimes I find reviewing all these guitars, the comment sections are heavily leaned into where stuff is made. I talk about where stuff's made all the time, but whether you realize it or not, I talk about what you guys talk about. It's what happens when you have a show where there's 1,000 people hanging out with you and talking, sending you comments and questions. You tend to reflect what you guys are talking about. What I can tell you is that I can show you a guitar and it could be perfect and flawless and amazing and the price you want to pay. And then I say it's made in this country and you go, I'm out. And that's fine. It's not judging anybody, please. Okay. It's your money. You should buy what you want. That's why I'm a believer of that. But what's interesting is that I have a really interesting Jackson experience, and here's the Jackson experience I had. So about 6 years ago, I bought a Jackson Soloist, a hardtail made in Indonesia in green, and it had some basic pickups, and I upgraded the pickups, and I loved that guitar, and I really loved it, and this will make sense in a minute when I get to this other story that we got to talk about next, somebody wanted it that I know, and I was like, okay, I'll sell it. So I sold it to them. It was a great guitar. In fact, I can argue it was as good as any American-made Jackson soloist I've ever played, including Nathan's. I thought it was just fantastic in every way. Am I saying all of them are that good? No, but that one was. It was really nice. And that guitar, I think I paid $699 for. So what's interesting is that this guitar is $2,600. I think it's $2,600 because it's made in the USA. I think Jackson Fender knows what Made in USA is worth. In other words, worth for a value, like a brand. And that's where I'm going with this. Where a guitar is made is become as much of a brand as the brand, to the point where now it's dual branding. For instance, go back before all this stuff. Go back 30 years ago. That's a safe number because I know this stuff doesn't exist before 30 years. 30 years ago, right? You would have 30 years ago, if I said I owned a Paul Reed Smith guitar and you heard the brand Paul Reed Smith, you would go, wow, that's an expensive guitar. But now there's a secondary brand qualifier in this argument. Now, if I said I have a Paul Reed Smith guitar, you go, oh, SE, S2, Core, private stock, right? Private stock and SEs didn't exist 30 years ago with PRS, right? PRS barely existed 30 years ago. I think they're like 36, 37 years. But the point is that, for instance, now there are very few brands where we could talk about this. I have a Nags behind me, and I'm not saying it's the best quality. I'm not saying it's quality, but if I say I own a Nags, you understand that it's expensive. There's quality levels, but not sub-branded countries. And that's what I mean by that, is that the country of origin now, the manufacturer of country of manufacturing, becomes its own brand. And so what I thought was interesting about this was some people saw this Jackson as an opportunity buy, like, wow, for this price, I'll finally buy this thing I never could afford. And some people thought, and I watched the opinions, and they were that extreme. And some people went, this is a joke, and they're just pulling one over on you. And I go, wow. So what is the value? Is the value, in other words, to the person who wants that guitar? And I decided it's because it's made in the USA. The made in the USA is the branding on top of Jackson. And that's what it is. And sometimes that brand means something to you, because the argument has always been the quality of how well it's made. But in this case, well, we know they're not made the exact same way. They're made in the same facility, not the exact same way, pretty close. And also, we know they change out components to lesser cost components. So again, this has been a very interesting thing, and to the point where I see it constantly when I review stuff, that the brand dictates the pricing as much as the actual brand. So I really have decided for myself this week, after watching all this and deep reflecting, that now we have brands and country of origin brand, and that's the two brands. So for instance, a perfect example of that is if I take a premium brand like Paul Reed Smith and I make it in Indonesia, that brand with the Indonesian brand stuck to it is less valuable than, let's say, a Kiesel, who's not as premium brand as Paul Reed Smith, but made in the USA. I know that's not the same equation because obviously Kiesels are more expensive, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, that's how people see this now, is this branding is now manufacturing is branding. And so the point of this whole tirade I'm on is, now why wouldn't manufacturers do the same thing they've done with their own brands? In other words, like we see with where they slap back again, you got to be pretty old. There was one point there was Cadillacs and Chevys, and then basically one day Cadillac just said, like, we're just going to put a Cadillac logo on a Tahoe, and that's a Cadillac too. And essentially it works with cars that way, right? They just slap a brand on a car and say that's what's premium about it, add some little features to it. The manufacturers are coming the same way now. They're like, oh, okay, we're just going to slap a premium brand on this import thing or this other thing, and then it's going to be premium. And then now we have to add the brand premium. So it's just becoming convoluted is what I'm trying to say. But I think it's effective, and here's why. Because I'm with most people where I'm like, when I saw the Jackson thing, my first reaction was, wow, sub $3,000 Jackson neck throughs. That's a deal. It is a deal, even if you have to upgrade the bridge. And actually, it's funny because somebody's Super Lead 100 says Japan kicks ass at making guitars. Here's what's funny about that. Everybody agrees that Japan makes great guitars. I think everybody is like too broad of a stroke, but you get the idea. But here's what's even funnier, and I think I've told you this so many times when I talk to companies where they'll talk about a guitar made in Indonesia, but they'll basically flat out tell you when you ask them when you're there that it's 90% Chinese parts. It's just assembled in Indonesia, and Indonesia just says made in Indonesia. It's not always the case, but it happens a lot. So it's really interesting. I thought it was an interesting topic. I just wanted to kind of talk about it with you guys and I'm really curious, and more so, I know you guys can't really respond to this stuff, but when you listen to this week, I hope you guys think about what I'm saying, which is, Jackson can make a guitar exactly like Nathan's in another country for a very affordable price, or they can make a guitar that's slightly less as good and still make it in the US. And then it's not even about which one they should do. Notice now they want to do both because they know that at some point it pulls some kind of trigger to buy a guitar. So hold on, I'm just looking at a lot of you guys' stuff. Because some of the funniest things. Another thing that came up this week, and this will finish off this subject, is that Paul Reed Smith Guitars released a video, I think yesterday afternoon, or it could have been earlier this morning, of their Indonesian facility and how, I know they had one before, but this is more detailed, talking about how they have their own building and how they make the SEs and how they do everything. It was a very interesting video. I've been to that factory, not the one that PRS's sub building, but Cortec, and I highly suggest if you're interested in guitars and how they're manufactured and built, I would watch that video. It was a very, very good video, and what they disclosed and what they show was really interesting. And like I said, I was really impressed. Okay. Okay. Some of the things you guys are talking about. Let's see. Yeah, it's really interesting. So this is a topic also that's coming up because I have a guitar review that's coming up where a company who I really respect reached out to me, and it was like one of those, like, if I'm going to put it in my top 10 moments of my life, they reached out to me and said, "Hey, we saw your deep dive videos and we would like to send a guitar for the deep dive and have you go through it." And I was like, oh, okay. And they're one of these companies that I really respect, but they're also a little, they're a little, everybody has really strong opinions because of the fact that they're very expensive and they're not made in the USA or somewhere where expensive guitars come from. So it's really interesting stuff. And I want to keep talking about this because I think the reason I talk about this is us old hack guitar enthusiasts. This is the stuff we talk about, but the newer people that are learning to play guitars, they're always confused by this talk. And I find it's very rarely based in quality. It's just based in, like I said, buy a good American guitar. And then here it is. And then in the same breath we go, but not this one because they used subpar components. Very interesting stuff. Okay, let's hit some super chats, shall we? As you know, I don't know if you guys all know this, but a lot of you know this. Super chats, how that works is the show is always an hour long. Everybody's like, no, it's not. It's 2 hours. Those of you who are diehard viewers know that the show was always an hour long. And I said, if you did super chats, I would extend the show out to do the super chats. And that's what we do. And that's why super chats are always towards the end, because I try to interact with as much of the community as possible. And then hit the super chats as like bonus round is how it works. That isn't a super chat, but this is a great thing. I got a great question this week from someone, and it said, "Hey, Phil, I noticed that in the last few episodes, you're not losing your voice. During COVID, you were losing your voice pretty regularly. And even when you had lozenges and drinking lots of water, were you okay? Are you okay now?" And I think if I didn't mention, I'll mention it now. Talking for 2 hours straight, especially when I would have meetings during the day and stuff and talk during those meetings, it was taxing my vocal cords to the point where you guys saw, or I was losing my voice, or I was like almost like choking. And so I went to get help. I went to the doctor. And long story short, basically I got vocal lessons. So I learned what to do. So that's why it doesn't happen so much now. I drink water during the show, but I drink most of the water 30 minutes to an hour before the show, because a little vocal thing you learn. You drink water ahead of when you need hydration in your throat and in your mouth. So I drink it ahead of time. I also don't talk for 30 minutes before the show starts, sometimes an hour. And I also try to minimize how much I'm talking before the show, so I don't because it was actually stressing my vocal cords. Because a little fun thing for you guys to know, you think, because you probably, a lot of you don't do this, you think that I'm talking to you probably on a regular toned voice. Right now, if you were in the room, you'd think I was yelling at you. That's how it works in media. your excitement level, whatever your excitement level, it just seems a little lower when it's can't be translated physically in the room with somebody. So you tend to hype it up a little bit. So I tend to push my voice a little harder. I'm yelling a little bit more. I'm more excited, more animated than I normally would be if you were just talking to me to make you think that, this is exciting. So thank you for asking that question. I thought that was a really good question. And so, and another cool thing was, like I said, I just learned to do some stuff. I don't have to do vocal warm-ups though, which is great. Hector says, hey, Phil, do you remember you discussing with us? Oh, no, discouraging. Do you remember you discouraging us from buying signature models? I'm going to say no, because I don't really ever try to discourage anyone from buying anything. The most I'll usually say is why I don't buy anything. And I have lots of signature models. I'm a signature model freak. There's a Nuno Bettencourt behind me. There's a Van Halen behind me. Do I have other ones in the room? I don't have any more in the room, but I have others. I have a Stuham Urge. I have a John Petrucci right there. I think there's 3 signature guitars right there. So I don't think I would be discouraging buying any signature guitars. This is what in the long-term prospects of signs are that are made year after year. Okay, so what about long-term prospects? I think maybe the question got a little jumbled. I'm reading it right, but I think it's just jumbled. So I'm going to go with the whole, we talked about artist models in the past, and we talked about when they discontinue, they tend to go in value, and that's what they could be good to long-time investments. Not that you want to invest in them, but, and I think what he's saying is, what about guitars that are just always constantly made? Yeah, I mean, they're constantly made, but if they're constantly made, it means there's buyers for them. That's basically what I was getting at with the artist guitars. If they stop making them, they tend to go up in value. If they constantly make them, they tend to hold value because trust me, they knock it off. If if you guys aren't buying them, they're not going to make them. I've seen very few companies where they, will warehouse thousands and thousands of guitars that you're not buying. I mean, it's not very common. Mr. Mont says, Phil, thank you for being honest, positive, and grounded. I appreciate that. It's a very nice compliment. 3 things in somewhat short supply on the internet. It depends where you look. I think as a whole, we have a great guitar community. One thing I will tell you is I've met a lot of the channels, and I can honestly tell you that 90%, and I actually feel bad rounding down to 90%. I just feel like that's 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 channels, I think, are genuine, honest lovers of music and guitars, and they like doing what they do, and they share with you. And I really feel that when I interact with them. I've become bigger fans of a lot of channels meeting them than I have watching them, which says a lot because it should be the opposite in most cases, right? You meet somebody and you go, oh, I thought I was a cool guy, and then I met him. So most of the time when I meet them, I go, how did I not translate this better? Right? Why didn't I not see this? They seem really passionate. Brosif, I have no idea how I'm saying this. Brosif Behemoth. I'm going to say Brosif Behemoth says, hey, Phil, I just bought a Mark V 25. Any recommendations on a cabinet? I've seen them paired with Lone Star 112s, but those seem hard to come by. I like that amp with the Vintage 30, and I like it as big of a cabinet as possible. So any of the oversized Mesa cabinets will do great. A 212 does even better. One reason why is because the thing I love about the Mark V 25 is it does 2 things really well. It plays really quiet really well. So if you want to practice super quiet, that thing, whether distorted or clean, can get super quiet. And if you want to play out in most gigs, it's going to get super loud. It's a pretty loud amplifier. It's not going to destroy a stage, but it's loud enough. And a bigger cabinet will let that amp do both those things very well. So I try to go as big of a 112 cabinet as you can tolerate with that amp. And then also, we would go to 212. A lot of people like the 110. That's punchy. My guess is that it would probably produce more mids at a lower volume. And of course, produce less bass, which may be nice as a feature, but not something I'm looking for. Like I said, I'm looking for like a bigger, rounder sound, and not so much the mids all the time. Stout Coffee says, why does Gibson not reissue the V90 and Explorer 90 models anymore? Wouldn't that make Gibson more competitive with modern guitar manufacturers? Well, here's the problem. You're saying the word modern and modern guitar manufacturers, and this is something, like I said, this is one of the gigs I get to do on a weekly basis, sometimes daily basis, working with companies outside of YouTube on everything from a marketing campaign to just a product, rollout or products in general. And, and so I'm just reflecting on some of the advice I might give a company when talking to them. And one of the advices I will tell you is, I'll tell you is, if you have a company that has heritage, you tap into that heritage. That is a value factor that no one else has. I clearly can tell you, when you think of companies like Fender, and you think of companies like Gibson, and companies like Rickenbacker, and I'm trying to think of others, and Seymour Duncan, and DiMarzio, and MXR. These are companies that have heritage in the idea that, a company heritage, no, but they have heritage in the idea that they have this history of making products, but history of being in albums and things that, in moments in time that may get recreated. In other words, there might be a big moment in time for another brand, a newer brand, but it's going to be really hard for them. So so what I'm going to say to that is that although I think Gibson, and certain older companies like Gibson, may want to, use products that they have to compete with more modernized companies, I think as a whole, sticking with the heritage is what people will really really stick with. Does it make sense? And the perfect example of that is, I like the Les Paul Modern. I think it's a great guitar. I played it a couple times. I like it, and I still don't own one. In fact, I have like an older reissue Gibson, and I don't even understand why. And I think it's because as much as I want them, I'm not a Gibson brand fan. In other words, same with Fender, same with all these brands. I'm not a fan of the brand as much as I am the guitars. And so I think, to me, like when Fender makes a modern Strat, I think, well, if I want a modern Strat, I'll have my Kiesel, or I'll get a Sir, or I'll get an Ibanez AZ, and I want my Strat to be vintage. And when I want a modern LP style guitar, maybe I'll get a PRS, or maybe I'll get a Nags, or maybe I'll get an ESP LTD, something like that, right? And so I think that's the logic, and everybody's different, but I think that's predominant in the market. So I think that's why Gibson does that. I think Gibson's learned already, stick with the thing that no one can compete with. I mean, it's not about they shouldn't do anything else other than that, but remember, value the thing that you have, that the niche you have, which is Gibson gets to roll out history, and so does Fender, and so does all these other, like I said, companies with a long history of saying, hey, this is the guitar that was used on these amazing albums. This is the guitar that was used for this. This was the product used by everybody. When it gives you a lot of credibility. One of my favorite things to always bring up with that is wah pedals. You think of the Crybaby wah pedal, the Vox Crybaby wah pedal. You think about it, it's today the most dominant wah pedal for sure. And I have one. I love it. There's things I love about it that's amazing. And I have Morley wah pedals, and there's been modern, like the Weeping Demon, is that what it is, by Ibanez. There's a ton of other wah pedals, and they're on their own merit very good. And I actually dare say better. Like, I think the Morley is better, especially the spring-loaded ones, which is the ones I like. But they're different. But here's the thing. When somebody goes, oh, the Morley just doesn't have it. Well, what they're talking about is that history. They don't have the Hendrix thing. They don't have that old school thing. And that's what the old Crybabies and the Voxes get to bring, is, like I said, that history, where all Morley can offer you is technology and advancement. So like I said, I think if you're a newer company focusing on technology and advancement, that's your game, that's your angle. If you're an older company, you bank on the history, and you can delve into each one, but I don't think you want to, you don't want to fight a fight that you obviously, not so much you can't win, but you're already winning the other fight. Mark Hall says, Phil, best amp between the Fender Hot Rod DeVille 212 or the Fender Twin Blackface 94 reissue? Both just retubed. Tone shaping is the big concern. I don't often buy an amp. Without a doubt. If it's not a weight issue, get the Twin, the Blackface Twin, man. I like the Hot Rod Deluxe. I like the Hot Rod DeVille, which is the 212 version of that amp. I love that amp. It's a great amp. I could say 1,000 things nice about it. But if you put them side by side and said, which one do you want me to plug into? Like if I said, hey, grab a guitar and plug in an amp, and they were sitting there, I would definitely plug in the Twin. The Twin it's a magical amplifier that if it wasn't for the fact that it's 90 something pounds, you know, I would probably, that's why the Tone Masters version is cool. Love it. Like I said, lighter version, but that's the amp I would go for out of those two. Aaron Adams says, hey, Phil, thoughts on the Vox MV50 amps? If they just had an effects loop, I think they would have been so much more. Their cab sims are remarkably good. The thoughts, like I said, Vox amps are an amp that I appreciate a lot. I don't own any. I think Vox for me has ended up like Orange. You know, I like anytime I can get an opportunity to do a video on one because it's something that I think is interesting. It's a good product. You guys like it, but it's not something I specifically go out and search for myself to own. And I tend to own amps that are modeled after those amps, which just proves that I like those amps. But there's certain things like with the Vox, there's certain things I like of the Black Cat, Bad Cat amps and the Dr. Z amps where they kind of mimic that. I like the mimic of the Vox type amps more. Susan says, just because you hang with us and share your knowledge every Friday. You know what? Thank you, Susan. I kind of look at it as like I hang with you guys and we just pick subjects and talk. So thank you. Okay. Alex says, it's said that vintage guitars are rare since we're only seeing the good ones that are left. So what will the future of vintage guitars look like now that we're mass producing such high quality guitars? Vintage guitars are in two categories for sure. They're in the collectible category. So I'm always apprehensive of anything like this. Because a lot of people are like, do you like vintage guitars? They always get to ask that. Well, I understand that a portion of their value is they're collectible. They are literally bought and sold as profiteering kind of concepts. Like, right, you just buy one, you wait it out. It's not a hard thing to figure out. Anyone who has a vintage guitar or had a vintage guitar knows it's something you can put money into. And it's like, I always call it parking your money. You just park your money in that thing, wait it out, and you'll sell it for a little bit more or a lot more. So because of that, most of the people I know that are into vintage guitars are buyers and sellers, and it has nothing to do with anything other than that's the majority of anybody who's into vintage guitars. They're buyers and sellers. Vintage things by nature. Collectibles are collectibles. Collectibles are essentially people who buy and sell are into them. That's not the only reason. That's just one reason. The other reason, of course, is the tone and the vibe and the feeling, and that's why people want them. But that all being said, to answer your question, there's two parts of it. And the one part I want to hit, which you said, the vintage guitars are rare since we only see the good ones. They're rare. I find we don't see the good ones. Most of the time when I see vintage guitars, they're not very good. Because the very good ones get scooped up and the richest people get to own them or the people that really use them. And sometimes they're both people, okay? But usually what I see is something is valuable because it is in that lineage of that vintage tone, but it's not a really good guitar. What I mean by that is a perfect example. I could walk in a store. Let's use a Fender Strat as a perfect example. I can walk in a store right now, look at 10 brand new Fender Strats, and let's say these two are not that great. One is really bad. These three are really good, and these three are really, really good. That's enough of the variables. I can do the same with vintage guitars. The only difference is people have a really hard desire to own a vintage guitar. So I've watched people, which is why I'm apprehensive. Like I said, I've watched people walk into a store, not even buy online. We're talking about physically in a store, pick up a guitar that I thought played horrible, sounded horrible, and then watch them talk themselves into buying it because of the fact that this was an opportunity to own this thing, this iconic thing. I will own a 64, blah, 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 and it will be the coolest thing ever. And meanwhile, I think I could pick up 5 guitars that are new that sounded better than that guitar. It's not proof that vintage guitars aren't great. It's proof that that vintage guitar wasn't great. It's just, that's how it works. So that's why I said, and it's to the point where even crappy vintage guitars have value. And that's what concerns me, is that when something is not very good, but it has a value, that's very dangerous, because it's not like a piece of art where it's just a piece of art. This is something functional, like a tool. And here it is, and it doesn't play that great, and it doesn't sound very good. And I told you, I one of the things that used to happen all the time was people would buy a vintage guitar and then bring it in for service and essentially want you to turn it into, a very playably amazing guitar. And because their brain says, of course, this is vintage, it means it's good because it's vintage. and you'd work on it, and then you'd have to tell them things like, okay, so here's some of the concerns we have, and here's the things we're going to fix, but this is where it's going to land. And they're like, I don't understand. It's vintage. It's good. And that's not how it works. Some vintage guitars are fantastic. Some are not so fantastic. No different than new guitars. But all vintage guitars have value. So that's the scary part. Luckily, some not very good vintage instruments get cannibalized for parts, and then they can be made into really good instruments through those parts. But, that's the thing. So to answer your question, the second part of your question, which was, is the mass-produced high-quality, the new guitars, are they going to hurt the vintage market or change the vintage market? No. The vintage guitar market, I think, is always going to be a strong thing. Because of the fact, and this, of course, is a discussion for the decades, and tons of guitar players are going to be discussing this forever for some reason. And what I can tell you is that the vintage guitar market is like any vintage market. It ebb and flows. To say that it will die is possible, but most likely, I think, and again, I'm kind of going off of memory here. I thought at some point, one of my friends who collected baseball cards told me the baseball cards were worthless. I feel like that was like 15 years ago. I want to say that, again, and I remember thinking and he's like, yeah, you collect them your whole life, and now all of a sudden nobody wants them. And then all of a sudden, I guess they got a resurgence. So that happens too. It happens with everything. You have a resurgence. So same with guitars. Me personally, I had a friend over. This is a funny thing happened this week. I mentioned our last Friday show, somebody asked me about my amps, and I said I could sell any one of my amps at any time. I could care less. I'm not really connected to anything other than maybe one or two pieces of gear. And funny enough, I think it was on Saturday, my buddy Joe texted me and says, hey, Phil, do you still have that Bogner? And I said, yeah. And he goes, do you want to sell it? And I'm like, yeah, I'll sell it. I don't care. And he's like, well, I don't want you to sell it if you don't want to. And I go, oh, I don't care. You can just buy it. And so he came and bought it. I gave him a really good deal because I had bought it before their price increase. So I charged him a little bit less than what I paid for it, but a lot less than what they're going for used now, or, less now. And he came over and we played all the amps and we talked for a little bit and he bought it. And then what's funny was, which ties into this, is I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's like I said, sometimes, you get caught up in valuing this stuff too much. And to me, it was a great amp. I'm really excited about having it. But, I'd played it for a year or so and I got it out of my system and I like my other Friedman amp better. And he actually helped me out. Remember last Friday, we were talking about Friedman amps and I was saying that I was thinking about getting the Twin Sister. He told me, we played them all and he's like, dude, you can't get rid of this. It's like the best amp. Like, yeah, it's a great amp. So I don't know. So like I said, and then what happened on that conversation when we were playing amps was he asked me about the Gibson, a custom shop that I had. And he's like, what makes this thing so valuable? And I said, I don't know. I said, it plays really good. Sounds good. I said, I played 3 real 59 Les Pauls. And I could not tell you the difference between those and this because I'm not a connoisseur of that level of instrument. But as someone who's not a connoisseur, I'm like, this is good enough for me. So same thing with vintage guitars. I think some people will always kind of seek it out, and some people will in my case, will always go, this is good enough. I'm fine with this. Can says, hey Phil, how's everything? I sent you an email. All right, Can, you and 25,000 people. And what I will do is I'm making a notation on my phone that look for Can. This is what it says. I told you, I think I've said this before. When it comes to emails, I love to tell you guys, I would love to tell you, in other words, I get so many emails and it's so busy, but that's not what happens. Like I said, it's literally, I had 2 viral videos, old videos go viral again. And if that happens, it's just like anytime. If I have a video and it does 5,000 views, I get that week I'll get 300 emails or, 150 emails, whatever, quite a bit. But if I get a video all of a sudden it does 100,000 views or 200,000 views or 70,000 views, or I had a video that just did 350,000 views in the last week and a half and it's a video from 2 years ago and just popped out of nowhere, then people see that and they send you they send you things. Everything's sending you from emails. So that's where it all gets smushed because all of a sudden I open up my email that day and it's just so long. I'm just sifting through it. So that's why sometimes you guys will see it all the time. Sometimes you can see me email and I'll respond to you in 5 minutes. You go, wow, that was fast. And sometimes you never get a response. And I get all kinds of, comments about that. And it's nothing more than just, it's chaotic and there's no real system to it. And I try to do what I can. That being said, there you go. Darren says, hey, Phil, I inherited a 1998 Wolfgang Special with dead pickups. Interesting. That's interesting. Worth the cost to have them rewound? No, I don't know why they'd be dead. They would have to be. Okay, so hold on. So it goes, anyways, have suggestions for replacements that are not Fender EVH. Thanks. Sure, of course. Well, first of all, look, this is really simple. I don't think they're dead. The odds of them being dead are not very likely. So, you know, I just can't imagine that. So what I would suggest is if they're in the guitar and they're not working, use a multimeter. I have tons of videos, right? Just use your get a multimeter. Use a multimeter and test them independently to make sure that they are not sending any signal. And then if they're not, before they need to be fixed, like rewound, they might have just a broken wire. That happens a lot too. The wires become old and frayed. But here's where I get kind of apprehensive. You're saying with dead pickups, the odds of a pickup going dead it's not very likely. Pickups don't, like I said, I feel pretty confident of this. 9 out of 10 times when I have a repair that is a bad pickup, it's very rarely the pickup, okay? Like I said, 9 out of 10 times is not the pickup. However, whenever I hear somebody say I have 2 bad pickups, the odds of 2 pickups going bad, and remember said to go bad, what really has to happen is somewhere the wire has to break, right? It's essentially, think about it this way. Don't think about a humbucker. Just keep things simple. Let's think about a single coil pickup. A single coil pickup is 1 wire. That's it. It's 1 wire. It's not 2. People are like, oh, it's a ground and it's hot. It's not. It has a start and has an end, right? So essentially, a pickup, right? If you think about it ahead, think about it like a spool of a twine. Right? Everybody's seen that, right? Take a spool of twine and has a start and an end. That's a pickup. Right? Imagine the pickup, the magnet could get degoused, right? In other words, the magnetic power, big magnet could have wiped it out. It's possible, but then it would probably just sound weak. I mean, to wipe it out completely, not very likely. The wire, like I said, you have 1 wire running around, and even if a humbucker, now you have, the 2 spools, but essentially those 2 spools, the odds of the wire breaking is not very likely, but if it did, we'd have to fix it. Or rewind it, of course, but the odds of them 2 doing it, it's not likely. So I got a feeling there's something else going on there. So that's why I said take out the first thing I would want to take out is the Occam's razor, right? Simplest solution is probably the right one. I think considering all things being equal, I would go with let's focus on a pickup. Just pick one, desolder even if you have to. You shouldn't have to, but desolder it and run it through a multimeter and see if you're getting signal through it. And that's where I would start. Now, all that being said, if the pickups are bad, would I rewind them? You could do that, but as simply as you could do that, you could take them out, put them in the case, and keep them with the original guitar forever, and put some new pickups in them. If I was going to get some new pickups in them, I would get DiMarzio pickups, put it in there. I'd put a tone zone in the bridge, or the Air Norton. You know what I'll confirm. I'm trying to remember. The Music Man pickups are DiMarzio's, and there is DiMarzio pickups that are based on those. The Tone Zone was the pickup that Eddie did not pick, had more low-end response for the bridge. But I think the Air Norton and I think the Blues something, I want to say Blues Breaker. That's what I said. I'm doing off memory, I'm guessing. But I will tell you this, while I try to find the answer for you this week, I'll try and confirm for sure what pickups will do it. You can read the article on DiMarzio's website about the Wolfgang pickups, and you can see in that article Larry talks about what pickups they did and what pickups are proprietary and how they came up with the different versions. So think of it that way. Darren says, hey, Phil, I inherit... Oh, that's the same one. Sorry, buddy. We all float here says, hey, Phil, I have a Sterling JP 15.7. Hey, I do too. Right there. We're twinsies. With a roasted maple neck fretboard, what should I use to clean and maintain it first time with anything not ebony or rosewood? I would totally use I'm going to look it up right now so I don't have to guess. This is what I use. What I love, everybody's going to tell you what they love, and there's probably some great suggestions there, but I have your guitar. So let's start with there. I have your guitar, and this is what I use on this guitar. I use the Music Nomad F1 Oil. It's what I use now. Not sponsored, not endorsed by those guys in any means. I have the big bottle, 8 ounce bottle, and I bought it. Hold on a second. Yeah, this is. Else, and I swear by that stuff. Swear you can use it on. You can get it anywhere. It doesn't matter. It's great stuff. So use it on your maple necks. Totally fine for maple necks. So very 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 clear. So we're understanding this. When American Music Supply reached out and said, "Hey, would you do some Music Nomad products?" I did some. They sent me a whole like a kit of stuff. Just some stuff for me to mess with and figure out what it is I liked and didn't like. I'm about to do that with another company right now, which is really cool. Where they're sending me a box of like goodies and go, "Okay, tell us what you like and don't like." And sorry, I was reading a comment. I should be paying attention. I'm sorry. I tried all their stuff, and that stuff, they said, "Oh, you can use it on any maple neck." And I was like, okay. And I just started going crazy with it, trying on everything to see, and I put it through its paces, and man, it works great. And like I said, a lot of people are saying boil linseed oil. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff. Trust me, this is not the only game in town. This is just easy, confident, but more importantly, this is why I'm suggesting it to you, because it's what I'm using on that exact same guitar. So if anything happens, it's going to happen to me too. You're going to be like, "Remember when you screwed up my guitar?" And I'll be like, "My guitar too, buddy." So at least we'll be the same. And I guess, misery loves company. So, but I've had no problem, and I put it on everything. Pedally says, "Hey, for the pedal jar, enjoyed your 74 review. Thank you so much." If you guys didn't see, I did the Lawrence Petros 74 Deluxe video. He sent one to me. As you guys know, Lawrence is in the chat sometimes. And great guy. And it was really cool. It was a really cool thing. I put a link down below if you want to buy one, if you're interested in them. Very cool pedals. I mean, as you guys know, he's an amazing builder, cool guy. There's a ton of reasons why to support him. Besides the fact that the product is just killer. And so there you go. I try not to, as you guys, I always tell you guys, or at least I try to always tell you guys, there's almost no scenario where I have a benefit if you buy. I mean, obviously the affiliate links pay me, but I don't really care. Like I tell you guys all the time, go call Sweetwater Direct and save money and get a discount over the phone, or don't use the links. Like I said, the incentive for me is to make the video, and then what you guys do with it is what you do with it. But I don't have there's no business arrangement where I'm on the back end getting paid if you guys buy a lot of stuff. And so you see that as I don't really push the product that way. I really kind of show it to you, present it to you, tell you what I like, don't like, but I really don't really say anything about whether or not you should support or buy. If you do, it's this case like this where I say, "Hey, support or buy." It's because I like Lawrence. He's a good guy, and he's in our community. And, and to me, if you're going to give somebody a few $100 for a nice pedal, I'd rather you give it to him than somebody you don't know or care about. So just thinking of that. Thank you, Litvey, for the happy face sticker. I appreciate that. Mr. G says, "How does the Dirty Shirley pedal, which I use, compare to the LPD A7? They're not even the same type of pedal, so I'll explain that in a second. Any other pedals you like the sound of running through a 68 reverb? I like the Dirty Shirley pedal. It's a great pedal. As you know, I have the small box pedal too. I like the Freeman pedals in general. The 87 pedal is a different monster altogether than the Dirty Shirley. I don't know what in Lawrence's lineup. I would say, if I was going to say what I thought sounded close to the Dirty Shirley in Lawrence's lineup, which is be the 74, that would be my guess, right? To me, the 87, and I've said this before, the 87 is in the, like I said, I like to put it in the vein of the 5150 and the Brown Eye, the Freeman Brown Eye BE100, except for The 87 is got more throaty mids and sounds more amp-like than those two pedals, right? They sound a little fizzier to me. So the 87's like, and here's what's funny about that. And this maybe help you guys with something, because sometimes, it's hard when I'm articulating this stuff, exactly why I'm saying what I'm saying. So let me put it to you in a way that makes a lot of sense. Let's leave the Friedman out, because I think the Friedman and the 5150 are kind of kindred spirits. They're very close and similar how they sound, and you may prefer one to another if you like those two pedals. But I love the 5150 pedal by MXR. I mean, I love it. I plug into it and I just love it. It's just a blast to play. That being said, if I had to use a pedal like the 57, or I don't know why I keep saying 57. If I had to use the 87, the MXR, or the Friedman BE100 pedals to record with right now, I would pick the 87. His pedal records better. It's more, like I said, it's more crunch, more amp-like. And everybody's different, but in my world of my mind when I'm playing, there are some things that I just love the way they feel and sound, and they kind of make me play a certain way, and there's just things I like about them. But when you're trying to, like, for an audience or for recording, there are certain things that just sound better that way. The 87 to me records really well. It sounds great. It's full, like I said, throaty. It sounds like an amp. It sounds like something's happening. Where the MXR and the Friedman sound great, but I find like I always have to fix something in the mix. And that being said, same with Dirty Shirley. Dirty Shirley is a little different animal, but I would say it would not compare to the 87. If you want something like the Dirty Shirley, but you want it from Lawrence, I would look at the 74. That's where I would look. Grumpy Mike says, for the Tone Jar, can you post a link to the site for your pickups? Thanks. There is one. The Blackstock pickups, there's actually a few in stock. I told you guys, I think you're going to see it more and more as the market's slowing down. I've told you guys we've been slowing down. The market slows down. I've been selling less pickups, which is actually not a horrible thing in my world, because I don't want to be in perpetual back order all the time. And, it doesn't do me any good if I can't. Most of the time, I'm just telling you guys I'm out of stock. I'm only going to, essentially what I've come to conclusion is I'm only going to make so many pickups. So really where I can't, that's where I'm at now. I'm only going to do so much stuff. I'd love to sit there and wind pickups all day and do that stuff. It would sound like a great idea on paper, but it just doesn't work for me. Like I said, so I have some. I got some. I got the back orders I got done. We got the boxes exactly on the 6th, like I said last week. My wife made a ton of boxes, and she's got all the packaging, and so I made up a bunch of pickups. So there is actually some in stock right now. So if you want to check that out. And if you're a patron, there's a patron code. So if you don't have that code, only came up because somebody asked me the other day about it. The patrons have a patron code for the Blackstock website. And so you can message me through Patreon, and I'll make sure you get the patron code, because it helps. It's important. It's, in other words, I'm trying to give you some of the money you gave me back through a discount. So to say thank you. Andreas says, is the delivery time on USPRS really almost a year now? Oh yeah, absolutely. Ordered a Silver Sky in March, but won't get here until January. Love the podcast. Yeah, PRS is they're backed up. Look, that's what I said. Companies are still backlogged. It's just how it is. I kind of get the sense I get it is, the market slowed down, but really the boat showed up. The boats started showing up with a lot of gear. So a lot of gear where you see a lot of stuff in stock has to be a lot of stuff that was coming imported overseas. Just the boats showed up. But as stuff made in the USA, seems everybody's in a perpetual backlog. I had ordered a Kiesel, and it's taking considerably longer than they quoted me. But no harm, no foul. But I'm just saying, like, I didn't get the impression like, wow, they're slowing down and they have lots of extra time to get the guitars out. Like they're like, they didn't hit the deadline. They're like, they got to take a little longer. So Thunder Falcon says, Phil, your thoughts on the new American Jackson SL3? That's what we just talked about. And the Jackson bringing back the American made Jacksons. Thanks you. That's essentially, if your super chats from earlier, I hit it. And if not, you can watch a replay, and I talk about it in detail, what I thoughts on it. Pretty cool guitars. I'm not in the market for one. One thing I didn't address was what I would buy one right now. And as you guys know, for me personally, if I was buying anything, something's got to go. And I don't have anything that necessarily like I would give up for one of those guitars. I've always wanted a Jackson Soloist. It's one of those guitars like I've never had a USA Jackson Soloist. Really cool. And I think that price point is rather approachable. I mean, it's still expensive. I mean, 3,000, everything's $3,000 now for anything high-end American made. It seems like, you know, I mean, it's just, and also I don't know. I can name 10 guitars that I think would, you know, kind of fit the bill for me. Plus, maybe also because I haven't played one. Maybe if I played one, I'd have a different opinion. Like, oh, now that I've touched it, it's amazing. Hiding Reality says, "Hey Phil, thanks for sharing your knowledge and great videos. Cheers for England." Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Sorry to hear the news about the Queen. You know, it's interesting. This is a weird platform to talk about this, but just give it a few seconds because I think it warrants it. You know, it's weird to think like my whole life she's been the Queen. I mean, that's an interesting thing. My wife and I were talking about this, about how weird it would be for us if like the president, I know it's not the same thing because you have the prime minister. I understand things are different, but we're trying to liken it to something, right? Somebody in that status in our country being around since the day I was born to now. Like it seems, and of course she was in longer than that, right? Since the early 52, I think, right? If I'm off, I apologize. But it just seems like I'm basically saying is I can understand. I feel like a lot of my heart goes out because I know it sounds, you know, she's 96 and you think, man, that's a well-lived life if you can make it to 96. But I also think like, I don't know how I would feel if somebody like that in my country that had been around the whole time since I've been alive is now gone. It feels like a weird thing happened. So just like I said, yeah, strange. So anyways, thank you so much for this super chat. And like I said, I wish I knew the etiquette of it. I only know what I see in movies. Like I know that the new king, you're going to have the new king now and stuff. I'm just, my wife would be great if she was standing here now. She's really into that stuff. She seems to know it. I don't seem to understand the rules. So I don't want to mess anything up. I just want to say, my condolences. If that's the thing you can say, I'm sorry. That's what we say. Zachary says, "Hey, any advice on selling a high-end LTD ED guitars? I'm trying to sell my Noel Gallagher 1960 ES 335 and wondering about possible outlets other than reverb." Sure, there's forums. I mean, I always suggest forums as a big point because of the fact that, I mean, that's where a lot of guitars, but by the way, this is just in guitars in general. Like I'll have a lot of people ask me like, you know, I'm trying to get at this blah, blah, blah guitar and they never come up on reverb. Well, a lot of guitars that are unique or specialized or have their own group of fan base and are particularly hard to get, not very common, whether, you know, all kinds of guitars, especially from the 80s and, you know, the 70s and stuff, and maybe the 60s, but definitely the 70s and the 60s. There's tends to be groups, right? There's fan pages. There's all kinds of groups. I did say focus groups, but I meant groups. You know, there's all fan-based groups. And putting them up for sale there is perfect, right? You know, because of the fact that you have a connoisseur, you have someone who's educated on what they're looking at, they know what they want, and they're in the market for one or another one, and you'll sell it a lot faster. In my experience, not only will you sell it faster, but you'll get more money for it, even if that money is less than you want, because like I said, sometimes they're just in the market not for one, but they're always in the market for like another one. So that's what I would suggest, is joining some groups like that or looking for groups like that. You can do that with some quick Google searches, find some stuff, and then ask around. All kinds of forums. You know, that as you know, I have an Ibanez gem, and you know, gems are like that. You know, there's all kinds of guitars like that. There's all kinds of like Ibanez artist guitars from Japan from the 80s and 90s are hard to find on reverb, and it's because most times you can go to all kinds of fan base sites where, you know, somebody will go, "Hey, I'm letting go of this guitar," and it's just gone before they even have to do the whole listing thing. And you can sell it peer to peer. And what's great is if you're concerned or anything, you can always, after you find the buyer, find some other intermediary, which is put it on reverb or something like that. I've had that exact experience too, by the way. Sometimes you're like, I don't know if I feel really right about this peer to peer thing, and you know, you're like, well, now you have a buyer. Just go, okay, I'm going to list it now on reverb. Click buy now. Here's the link, and then now you have the same process, and so. That's something to think about. It's Newbie says, watch your show last week where a subscriber mentioned the Servo Taurus pedal. It is better Oh, it is the better button. So good. In other words, he liked it. So that's awesome. I had a viewer send me a whole thing about that pedal and something. I had some information, but it was really long and it was not relatively close to me. So we'll talk about next week. Where, in other words, I guess they're offering a deal on them. So if I can, I'll put a link to the information. If not, we'll talk about it on next Friday's show. Son of John says, "Hey Phil, I am the new guitarist, and I want to know where I can learn through a recommended video on how to change the change out. Oh, how to change my guitar strings on a Squier Stratocaster. I have a video on that. I'll put a link down below. It's how to change your strings on it gives you the 4 methods. I don't remember now. I mean, there's tons of videos on how to restring guitars, but that video is the one I made, and why I did it is because it really just focuses and gives you the techniques and lets you decide. And there you go. So hopefully I'll put that. And if not, doesn't work for you, like I said, there's tons of other videos. There's tons of videos on how to restring guitars on YouTube, and most of them are pretty good. But like I said, I have one, so I'll link that one. Guitar Habit says, "Happy New Guitar Day. My number 14 is on the way. A Purple Ert Headless GW2. That's a good guitar. I reviewed that guitar. Can you suggest a bridge picker replacement? Will complement the neck if I should find out that I don't care for it." Yeah, I didn't really care for either one of those pickups. That was the downfall of the guitar, if you remember. And but your guitar could come with slightly different pickups. That's what's great about guitars like that. They have variables in their production runs. I personally, on a guitar like that, I would just put a JB and a Jazz in that thing, and I think it would sound fantastic. Seems easy, and you can find those relatively inexpensive as a set. Something I would suggest, start with just something basic, especially with a guitar. I think those mids and those pickups and the tones of those pickups would go well with that guitar. Thank you, Rizzles, for the super chat. Steven says, "Hey, Phil, my new Schecter Nick Johnson has a static sound and my hand touches the pick guard as I play. My other guitars don't do this." Any thoughts? Yeah, all you have to do is, I use static guard. You can use dryer sheets. Keep in mind that some of them have fragrances on them that get cakey, and if you run the dryer sheet on the pick guard, sometimes you're just getting that cakiness mess on there. So you can get a can of static guard. It's a spray. If you watch any of my videos in the shop, you'll see it's in the background. Spray it on a cloth. I like anything, like I said, I always use 100% cotton, flannel, or microfiber, right? It's what I hate, shop towels, so to speak. Spray it on there, dry cloth, spray it on there, just to get it damp. That's all you're looking for, something where you can feel a little bit of that moisture from the spray, nothing overkill, and just go ahead and tap or bat on the pick guard and just discharge the static electricity that's on the guitar, on the pick guard. And it will take a couple times. This is the thing that happens. Sometimes I made that suggestion once, and I did it in a couple videos, and what's funny is somebody did it and they said, "Oh, it came back." And I'm like, "Yeah, it will." So you gotta do it again and again. And there could be a ton of reasons why it's coming back, and you may have to do it for the rest of your life, or you may just get a discharge and it's fine. But it happens. And sometimes it's not your fault. Sometimes it has to do with how it got insulated, and it also has to do with a lot of times when they were cutting it. One of the things I don't like about cutting pick guards is that when sometimes you're cutting them, all of a sudden they get static charged, and all the little debris from the pick guard stick everywhere, up and down your arms, all that stuff. That stuff gets everywhere. It's fun. It's fun. Yes, fun. That's what I'm saying. It's fun. Okay. Okay. Hold on. Man, now you guys are on all kinds of subjects. Dougal Dog says, "Hey, any experience with the new Hamer guitars?" I have not. Every Hamer I've touched has been years and years and years old. Haven't seen any new ones. But I'm aware that they're making them again, or that they have been making them for a little while again, but I haven't tried one. Okay. And again, if you have a question for me, make sure you put a question mark at the beginning so I know. That'll make it easier for me. Hold on as I jump around here. Brian wants to know if we're going to get a review of the Nags. We will. There is, yes, yes. This week was supposed to be like 4 videos were supposed to drop this week, and they didn't drop because I was editing and my computer was bogging down again, and we thought we had it fixed. And again, I bought this computer in November of last year, so it didn't last very long. And the reason being is that it's a lot. It's not the computer's fault. I bought a computer and then I changed the way I did content. And the way I do content now, the files are just, there's so many cuts and edits now. It just started bogging the computer down. And so essentially, I said, I don't even remember what day of the week. It was probably Monday. I said, screw it. And I went and bought a new computer. And now the new computer tears through these 4K files like they're nothing. However, it took me like, it takes a day I had to transfer all this stuff to the new computer and do all that stuff and then do the updates. And it just took so it's slowed everything down. But yeah, the Nags is on that list of videos. The 11 said, light blue Strat fill. Yes, he's talking about the one behind me. Do tell. That is a American Professional Strat with a solid rosewood neck. It's all stock. It comes with that rosewood neck. I bought that guitar when the CITES ruled that you couldn't get rosewood anymore. And I thought, I should get a solid. Well, I didn't think that. I was in a store. I was playing it. I saw another one and I thought, I should get a solid rosewood neck because you'll never get one again. And then CITES reversed that for guitars. And now it's not even a big deal. Sean says, Phil, did you get the studio? Did you get the Mac Studio M1 Max? I did. That's what I got. Because the one I bought last year, so that when I bought the computer, the Mac I bought last year, that had not come out yet. It was right before it was about to come out. So maybe it wasn't November. Whatever it was right. I was like, they're like, in a couple months, the new studio is going to be the thing to get. I'm like, okay. And so I got their most powerful one up, or whatever Mac I could get at that time for besides, the studio stuff. And, which was more than adequate. I was just updating it because it had been, a few years since I had a new computer. And I got the new computer and everything was fine. But like I said, I had changed how I started editing the videos. Like I said, the deep, what I call the deep dive format is so much editing. It's so much chopping and splicing and overdubbing and all this stuff. And it just was bogging down the machine too much. So I said, screw it. And I've been pushing off, not buying a computer for the last couple of months going, this is because, just I'm like, I can't, I couldn't justify it. But sorry. Some of you guys are like, my computer's 10 years old. Look, you know what? If you do video editing, this is the thing to have. You got to have a computer that's new and can handle it. Okay, let's do one last question before we go. Does anyone have a last thing to talk about? Okay. Luke says, how do you feel about refretting a guitar? I'm terrified to have it done to my 2005 Strat, but it needs it badly. It's nothing. Refretting is really, refretting a guitar is a very basic thing. There are things that can go wrong. Okay. Generally speaking, those things will go wrong with a couple, like maple fretboards are a little bit more, problematic than rosewood. Rosewood's the easiest. Ebony sometimes can chip out a little bit. So you got to worry about that. Maple, same thing. You can splinter, chip it off, and it's harder to hide. It's not very common. I say that I'm always afraid. Hold on, I got to knock on wood. I'm always afraid to talk about that stuff. When fretboards chip and stuff, when you refret them, because it hasn't happened to me in years. You know what I mean? So it's not even a big thing, but it's something to be aware of. Refretting is just a very, very easy process to handle. It's if you can go on YouTube. I have a video where I refretted an inexpensive guitar. I have a couple of refret videos. There's a couple of refret videos on other channels. You can watch them. They're very scary because of the fact that, not scary, like they're scary for me to tell you, because they always seem like, I feel like people watch you do it and it seems effortless, and it's not. It's just not super, super hard. The thing about frets, and this is the thing I can tell you. So let me give you some, this is why I wanted the question, because I want to give you some advice about having your guitar refretted. Okay. You have to understand that even though a guitar needs a refret, refrets devalue guitars. Guitar players are very paranoid about the word refret. Okay. It's a very, very, very scary term when you're buying a used guitar. Like, guitar has been refretted. Just the first thought is like, who did it? Did they know what they're doing? You can find tons of good places that can refret. And nowadays, if you don't have a local person, there are tons of people. Not only does Sweetwater do it, and Chicago Music Exchange, and I think Music Zoo as well too, like bigger stores. You can send to them. I'm not saying they do it the best. I'm just saying they're accountable. You can trust the fact that they're going to return your call if you have a problem when you get it back. So I would suggest maybe those kind of places if you don't have somebody you can trust local where you're at. That being said, the concern that I find with most people in refretting is that the thing you have to think about is, some players get the guitar and the frets were already worn out. They've been crown leveled a few times and they're kind of low. And they play it, and then they're the last one that need the refret. And they get the refret, and the first thing they go is like, oh, it's all messed up. Well, one of the things that you might perceive as messed up is that the frets were worn down pretty flat and low, and they replace them generally with whatever frets were originally on the guitar. So if you have medium jumbos, 6100, 6000, whatever, you're going to put the fret wire. They're going to put the fret wire on that was on the guitar there, and you may not have been either the original customer with that fret wire, or where it was that high, or it's been years and years and years since you've played the guitar with those frets. So they feel kind of different to you. And that's, so I've heard musicians have different theories on this over the years. Like, if you have frets that have been very low for a long time, maybe you should have, a more vintage fret wire put on them, and so on. I don't really necessarily think that's a good idea. I think you should put on whatever fret wire you like. That's another thing I remind you, is that you're not stuck with a fret wire that's on there. So if you have another guitar that you really like the fret wire, and especially if it has the same radius and type neck, because that's another thing, because different fret wire feels different on different fretboards. And that's another thing, right? So it's not so much about the quality of workmanship. It's just, you got to be ready for the feel of it. So I wouldn't worry about it so much. I know it's not an inexpensive process, but one thing I have to always remind every single person, and you'd kind of said it was going to be on a Fender, right? Is that you can buy aftermarket Fender necks. And this is something I've suggested and had a great response with, in other words, feedback from viewers over the years, where I say, hey, let's say you have a made in Mexico or made in USA Fender Strat or Tele, doesn't matter. And you say, okay, it needs a refret. And I say, well, you can buy a made in Mexico neck or a made in USA neck from Fender, and it comes with a warranty. It's a warranty neck. It's a serial numbered neck with warranty. Okay. And you get that neck and you either install it yourself or have somebody install it. You shouldn't need anyone to install it other than the nut. The nut slots are just, they're slotted. In other words, they have little slots on them, but they need to be cut. They need to be filed out. Okay. So it just needs a basic setup. You can just essentially take it to most people, and most places will charge you a setup, maybe some, to slot the nut a little bit extra for that. But here's what my point is. You take the original neck off, it'll be fine. Stick it in the box that the other neck came in, put it in a shelf in the closet. Play the guitar forever. If you ever sell it, put the original neck on it. And trust me, it'll probably hold value as, even if it's not vintage. It's not about that. Just, and then you take your aftermarket neck and keep it. So that's the one thing about a Fender that's really cool, that they started selling the aftermarket necks. That's one thing you can do. You can also get Warmoth necks and, all kinds of necks. There's Mighty Mites and stuff. Everybody's gonna have tons of suggestions. I like higher quality necks that are I like the quality that comes from Warmoth and stuff, and I like the Fender necks, but that's just a suggestion, especially if it's expensive. See, Stan's saying $650 from Sweetwater, I'd buy a new guitar. Well, again, that's my whole point. $650 is what you could pretty much buy a Fender USA neck for that guitar and put it on there and put the old neck in the box, and now you have a new neck, and you can either sell the original neck off one day or sell the aftermarket neck. Like I said, it holds some value. So the other thing is, remember, you don't have to just buy the necks from Fender. You can buy Fender branded necks that are Fenders, I should say, because they're Fender, from Stratosphere. It's phonetically correct. It's S-T-R-A-T, Strat, and then it's O-Sphere. Stratosphere with an S in there. Just trust me, Google it, and it'll come up. They are usually on Reverb and eBay, and they have their own website. And they're a shop that basically cannibalizes Fender guitars and all kinds of guitars, but mostly Fenders. And you can buy USA-made necks and stuff that are actually off guitars. And they sell them to you as like used, but they're basically new guitars that they just cannibalize. That's their whole thing. It's kind of like a parts shop. So, and then because Curtis just did a last question real quick, we'll do, Phil, did you get a chance to see Wolfgang's performance at the Taylor Hawkins tribute? I did. Do you think the Wolfgang hollow body will be a phenomenal demand when it hits the market? I hope it does. So I saw the performance, and I thought he did great. I'm a fan of Wolfgang. I maybe I've told the story before. If not, I'm gonna tell it now. I saw Tremonti when he came to town many years ago. I can't remember the year. Pre-YouTube, pre me being on YouTube. And Tremonti came to town, and they had let the original bass player go, and the guest gave Wolfgang a couple nights notice, and he came and played with them, and he played that night. He was fantastic. The whole band was fantastic. But what Tremonti had did, the band Tremonti from, he's from Alter Bridge and Creed and stuff. What they did was they said, it was at a club, and it was in Scottsdale, I think. And they said, hey, and I didn't do it on purpose. Well, a lot of us didn't. My friends were with me too. We bought CDs and some, shirts and stuff. They said, hey, by the way, they made an announcement. Hey, if you buy any merch after the show's over, don't leave, hang out in the bar, and we'll take pictures and hang out and sign things and hang out with you guys. So we're like, all right. So we hung out, and you stood in a line, and you get to talk to him. You could talk to him as long as you wanted, and so I got to talk to Wolfgang, and man, he was super, super nice, a guy. And I even mentioned to him, I said, one of the things that is crazy is I said they should make a Wolfgang bass, because you have that Wolfgang bass, and I think it's cool. Like, I think that bass body shape would be, that body shape would be great for a bass. And he's like, yeah, you think so? And it was so funny. Like, I some people are humble and some people pretend to be humble, I'm sure. But I really think he was sincere when he was like, because he seemed really like, really? You think I should have my own signature bass? And I was like, yeah, you should have a Wolfgang bass. Like, right? And he was like, oh, like, it didn't occur to him. I thought that was really cool vibe. So obviously I like him, and I'm a fan of, obviously, Eddie, his father, and everything. So that was really cool to see, and especially, I thought the show was good. And then, yes, I think the hollow body. I think the guitar is cool. So there you go. I think the guitar looks cool. I think it sounds cool from everything I've heard and stuff of it. And funny. I have a funny story. Funny story was I got asked roundabout, I guess, to interview him and that guitar when it comes out. So I'll never know if it's going to happen, but I got asked. But I know one of the things where we talked about was somebody was saying to me, I guess, like, he's a little nervous that I'll get too geeky with it, and he's not that nerdy that way. And I said, oh no, I said, I'm not gonna get that nerdy. And I just thought it was funny, like, again, kind of showing how humble he is as a person. I think the guitar is going to do great, period. I think it will do, because it's a cool guitar. And of course it's got the lineage of the EVH brand and stuff. And then of course this is just going to push it over the charts. And then somebody says, I missed Jeff Parker's super chat. That was actually Brian. Thanks, Brian. Let's see, Jeff. There it is. Jeff says, going to a large guitar swap meet this weekend, looking for a resonator guitar. Never had one. What to look for in a good used one, common flaws, repairs, etc. The resonator guitars are real simple. They are loud. And one of the things that's a little tricky about resonator guitars is that most of the time they don't play very good because that's, there's for slide. So you don't really oh, it plays great. So you're trying to figure out kind of deduce the quality. One thing I will tell you about resonator guitars that I've learned is the same thing I would tell you with classical guitars, which is they are loud even when they are cheap. So you want to make sure that they sound real pleasant and they're very loud. That's how, if you're looking for a good one, that's what you're looking really for. Something that's really vibrant and really loud, resonates really strong. It's a resonator guitar. But the reason I say that is, a lot of people, especially, talking about cheap resonator guitars, which I don't think you're going to be looking for. When you strum it, you're like, oh, it's really loud. You're like, oh, it's so loud. It seems impressive. But you got to understand that even the cheap ones are loud. So that's not the quality mark. That's not the benchmark. It's really the benchmark is they got to be really loud and they have to have this pleasing tone. And a lot of them don't. And it's a tricky thing. But that's the main thing. Other than that, it's a little tricky because it's hard to look inside them because a lot of them just have small F holes or things like that, where you can't see inside to see the bracing and see if there's issues. But, just visually inspect the guitar, but mostly play the guitar. Play the guitar as much as you can. And again, keep in mind, whenever you're in those kind of environments, you tend to impulse buy. So just fight that, right? Now, like I said, tell yourself, me personally at a guitar show, because you do get ramped up. The idea is I do this a lot with not only guitar shows, but when I travel. Like I go to a town and I go, Nashville's a real problem for me because you go to Nashville and in your head, you're like, I got to go to Nashville and buy a guitar when I'm in Nashville. So I could tell everybody, hey, I was in Nashville and I bought a guitar, like this whole feeling. And you really put your impulse buy response at like 10. So fight it. You're still going to do it, but fight it because again, you're going to lessen the chance of buying something you regret. So that'd be my only advice. All right, guys, on that note, I'm gonna let you go. As always, I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me this Friday. I hope you guys plan to have a great weekend, play some guitar, and until next Friday, I'm going to say thank you so much for your time and